What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So it's time to predict the opener of the UFC 296 main card, Ian Garry versus Vicente Luque. Great welterweight matchup. A lot's going to shake out. There's a lot riding on this fight for whoever gets their hand raised. The thing that sticks out to me is that Garry is almost a 4-1 favorite against Luque. And I get the fact that he's an undefeated rising star. He is also dealing with a lot of personal issues right now, thanks to Sean Strickland.
Yeah.
But Vicente Luque, I don't believe, should be a 3-1 underdog against really anybody at welterweight, let alone a rising prospect. How do you see this fight playing out?
I think the money line's a bit off, and usually that basically goes off of where people are betting. And casual fans and people that like to bet on MMA have a lot of recency bias, and also they love to see an undefeated record go in there, and then they'll just throw all their money towards that guy. Ian Garry is very good. He's undefeated, and he's going in there kind of brash and proving a point every time he goes out there, and he's got great finishing ways. His striking is very good, and he's big for the division. But like you said, Vicente Luque is not a 3-1 underdog against anybody. And I'd venture to say that if you look at his matchups against the former champions and the people that are leading or ahead of him in the rankings at 170, he probably wasn't that big of an underdog against most of them either. So people and the casuals to be putting that kind of money and hope into Ian Garry says that he's definitely getting the attention of the masses, but I don't know if his skills are there to really go out there and basically smoke Vicente Luque. I think this is going to be a competitive match, and I believe it'll probably take place on the feet for the majority of the 15 minutes. Of course, we might see a scramble or two or a takedown attempt or something like that, but Vicente's very comfortable on the feet, striking with really good strikers, and of course, Ian Garry likes to go out there and try to knock his opponents out. So I see this fight staying on the feet for as long as it lasts. Ian Garry does have that knockout power, and you've got to be careful when you go against him because he's so long and he has great range. He's able to use those long limbs to get his strikes off. But Vicente Luque's a vet. He's been in there with the best, and I think this is going to be a great fight. I'm not going to bury my lead. I think Vicente Luque does have the tools to win this fight. And with Ian Garry, going through everything he's going through, as they say, when it rains, it pours. I think it's going to be pouring at the Machado house for the foreseeable future. I think Vicente Luque is going to go in there and deal with a guy who's got more than just the fight on his mind. So I've got Vicente winning.
Yeah, and I'm actually leaning towards Vicente Luque as well. I'm going to pick the underdog in this fight. And I think that people are looking at the last three fights for Luque, and he's 1-2 in his last three fights. But if you look at who he lost to, it's Jeff Neal and Belal Muhammad. Jeff Neal gave Shavkat Rakhmonov everything he could handle,
right.
And Belal Muhammad has been knocking at the door for a title shot for quite some time now. So it's easy to compare an undefeated streak to a streak that doesn't look so impressive in the last couple of years, but you have to look at the names on the resume.
Yeah,
and for Vicente Luque, the strength of schedule is far superior to that of Ian Garry. And I totally agree with you. A lot of fighters are professionals and they say, I can close the door on personal matters when the cage door closes and it's all business. But at the same time, when certain things have been coming at you and very personal things at that, I was listening to an interview just earlier today where Ian was saying that he's concerned for the safety of his family at the fight and stuff like that. So when things of that nature, and I don't think it's really a good idea in general to bring a young family with really small children to a cage fighting event in the first place. When you have this layer of complexity and drama on top of it, I think it's probably best to keep the family home or at minimum in the hotel room, because that's going to be running through the back of his mind, whether he chooses to believe it or not. And when you're in there and you're squared off against a fighter like Vicente Luque, who's got great knockout power, who's got outstanding submissions. He's submitted the submission ace, Michael Chiesa. He defeated Tyron Woodley. He's been in there with the best fighters that 170 has had over the last little bit. And he's a veteran, but he's a young veteran. He's almost like Max Holloway in that sense, that he's got those crafty veteran skills, but he's really not all that old. So I think Vicente Luque is going to be able to handle his own on the feet, and I think that he's going to be able to get Garry up against the cage if he needs to. If Garry starts getting rangy and starts landing big shots, he's got the wherewithal to smother him and get him against the cage, potentially drag him down to the ground and start to win minutes. I think it's going to be a difficult fight for both men. Both of them are going to take damage in the fight, and I think it's going to go to a decision. I don't think Ian Garry can finish Vicente Luque, and I don't think Vicente Luque's game plan is going to really go out there and throw caution to the wind and try to knock Ian Garry out. I think he's going to try to outclass him. So I think that's why my prediction is going to be a 29-28 decision victory for Vicente Luque.
Yeah, close fight either way you pick it. And I think Ian Garry is going to go in there with a little extra aggression. And he's always come in as an electric fighter. And since he's been in the UFC, he's been putting together some really great fights and finishes. But Vicente Luque also has to be able to recognize that he's going in there with a guy that's not just fighting, in a cage fight, but he's fighting for his family. He's fighting for his own pride. And while I agree with you, children probably shouldn't be at their parents' event, especially when it's a cage fight. And especially, I think his daughter or his son is like under 2 years old.
Very young. Yeah.
So very young, no business being there. And while he's probably saying things like, I'm worried for my family's safety, I get it. You're always going to protect, and you're a protector and a provider, so you have to say those kinds of things. But nobody's like angry at Ian Garry. They're more angry at like the whole situation. Yeah. Not even his wife. They're just like, man, this guy is not the cool guy that we probably thought he was going to end up being. And so I think people kind of look at him as the laughing stock. They're not like angry with him. I don't really see it as that. So I don't think
it's almost like he's the brunt of the joke. I don't think his family's in any danger, but at the same time, I think his wife plays this kinds of stuff up. I think she will not stay home for that specific reason. She likes the limelight, and I think that's going to be a problem.
Right. She seems like she might have been a little jealous of Nina Agdal and all of the drama that Dylan Danis brought her into. But then, of course, Nina Agdal had to show up to the boxing event for Logan Paul versus Dylan, because if she didn't, then she would have remained irrelevant. You can't go ghost on social media and then not show up to the event. She realized that Dylan did all of this promotion stuff for her and basically was like, if I don't show up to the event, I'm not going to be able to steal any of that thunder. So I think whatever Ian Garry's wife's name is, she didn't get near the attention that Nina got, but whatever her name is, she's going to be there because that's, kind of in her nature to do that. But back to the fight. I think Vicente Luque can't get caught on his heels. And if he does, he realizes he's in there with a guy who's like not angry at him, but angry at Sean Strickland and angry at other people. He's going to, like the old saying, like my dartboard has Sean Strickland's face on it, right? That's going to be Ian Garry, and he's just going to be able to take the aggression out on Vicente Luque. So Vicente's got to realize he's going to be in there with an angry fighter, a guy who's going to get an emphatic finish, a guy that wants to do anything in his power to get his hand raised so he can go get an interview with Joe Rogan and get on a microphone and make his call out. Ian Garry is a smart guy. He's a worker, and when it comes to building his next fight and creating hype, he knows how to do it. And while I don't see him getting Sean Strickland next, he'd love to get the opportunity to talk to Joe Rogan, get the microphone, and then, answer any of the questions or basically just set the record straight for anything that's been going on in the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks in his personal life.
Yeah, certainly he'll be looking to do that, but I'm sticking with my prediction. I think the underdog, Vicente Luque, the veteran, is going to get it done.
I think so too, and I think he's going to beat Ian Garry at what Ian Garry wants to do, which is striking.